Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving straight into the intense, highly allegorical world of Chapter 1 of New Teen Freedoms. Right from page 1, the author hits us with this massive philosophical clash. We're going to completely unpack the battle between absolute, unchecked indulgence on one side and cosmic accountability on the other. To break down all this dense world building, here is our roadmap for today. First, the sanctuary assembly. Second, Sir Pent's false freedoms. Third, the student archetypes. And finally, we'll look at the cosmic ledger. Section 1. The sanctuary assembly, building the dystopia. We kick things off right inside the assembly, where a deeply oppressive, yet strangely numbing atmosphere has already been established. This isn't just your typical young adult gathering, it's ground zero for a radical social experiment. The text describes this heavy, gray, spiritual smog pressing down on all these young adults, which is known as the fog. Think of it as engineered anxiety and confusion. It's designed to keep them totally detached, essentially making them act like strangers in their own lives. It's absolutely crucial because it paves the exact psychological runway needed for our antagonist to take the stage and actually be welcomed. Moving to Section 2, Sir Pent's false freedoms, the pitch. Stepping right through that fog is Sir Pent. He's this sharp-suited, charismatic antagonist who just completely owns the room. And he steps up to the microphone with a radical, highly extreme proposition. You really have to listen to exactly what this guy is championing here. He actively promotes downward evolution through unfiltered chaos. He literally tells the crowd to blindly wish for whatever your body desires and see how low you can go. He's framing total surrender to your basest impulses as the ultimate liberation. No way around it, it's a wild pitch. This whole philosophy builds into his sanctuary declaration. Sir Pent casually announces the removal of every single traditional limit. We're talking unrestricted physical indulgences like drugs and unlimited energy drinks, totally unregulated medical and biological alterations, and the complete elimination of all moral, academic, and authoritative oversight. It's a real free-for-all. Okay, so here is the absolute core tension of the chapter. It's a stark philosophical contrast. On one side, you've got Sir Pent's downward evolution, which is basically a chaotic playground of impulse. And on the flip side, you have characters like Evan and Evelyn. They represent upward evolution, which is completely grounded in foresight, personal accountability, and the very real, unbending nature of cosmic laws. Section 3. The student archetypes. Reactions to chaos. To really get this allegory, we have to look at how these young adults actually react to this sudden lack of rules. They aren't a monolith, you know? They represent vastly different psychological responses to a world suddenly stripped of its boundaries. The author brilliantly uses 3 specific individuals to represent distinct segments of a society overwhelmed by choices. Diesel embraces pure hedonism. He's immediately looking for the loopholes. Then there's Abby, representing inner conflict. She's horrified but still magnetically drawn to this new social currency. And finally, Rev represents complete numbness. He's just exhausted and looking for an end to all personal effort. Take Diesel, for example. He immediately tests the dangerous edges of this wild new world. He shouts out demanding to know if boundaries, even basic safety ones like locker room rules, are gone. He wants to know if he can consume unlimited energy drinks, coffee, and donuts, or if they can just demand participation trophies and automatic passing grades. And Sir Pent? He cheerfully answers yes to all of it, showcasing a total collapse of societal guardrails. But then, in stark contrast, you have Evelyn. She is the voice of resistance here. She stands right up and challenges the room, warning the crowd about the undeniable reality of cause and effect. She hits the nail on the head, pointing out that cosmic laws don't care about your feelings. They're predictable. If you touch the fire, you're going to get burned, regardless of how free you declare yourself to be. And right alongside her is Evan. He's actively fighting that numbness we talked about earlier. The text describes this golden pressure building in his chest. It's his inner moral compass fighting through the engineered confusion. He calls out Sir Pent directly, recognizing that this environment isn't about expanding human potential at all. It's about degrading it. Which brings us to Section 4, the cosmic ledger, the hidden cost. This is basically the climax of the chapter, where the grand illusion of consequence-free living is unmasked for the audience, even if the young adults themselves don't quite see it yet. This sequence is where you see the trap snapping shut. Sir Pent gets super theatrical and throws a stack of blank graduation papers into the air. He tells everyone it's a list of all the non-existent requirements they need to move forward. Naturally, the crowd cheers and scrambles for a paper with no requirements, but they are completely missing the massive catch hidden in plain sight. But Evan realizes the horrific irony here. He turns one of the papers over and points out to the cheering crowd that the blank backside lists all the real-world jobs and opportunities they will actually qualify for, which is absolutely none. Zero. It perfectly summarizes the hollow, empty nature of Sir Pent's so-called gift. Now, as these young adults rush out to the unregulated hallway dispensers to begin their new lives, they completely fail to notice this building weight. The author describes invisible belts turning into literal weight around their waists. Actually, scratch that. It's more like a creeping spiritual debt. They falsely trust that a magic savior or a blanket of endless forgiveness will automatically pay their bill, while this very real debt quietly builds in the dark. So, wrapping up this explainer, we're left with a pretty massive question that captures the thematic heart of Chapter 1. If absolute freedom comes with an invisible, non-refundable cost, is it truly freedom? Or is it just a different, heavier kind of cage? Keep exploring those deeper meanings, and thanks so much for joining me today.